DaVo here from the Axiom Body Piercing Studio in Des Moines, Iowa, located inside Skin Kitchen Tattoo. Coming up next, aftercare instructions for nostril piercings. First off, a little bit of a disclaimer. I'm recording these instructions today, and these are up to date for June of 2018. However, if you've been pierced in the future, a couple years from now, what have you, at the Axiom or somewhere else, I suggest that you get up-to-date information on how to take care of your piercing. New information always comes available in research and so forth. It's a new industry. I mean, if you really think about it, body piercing's only really been around since the 70s, so it's only about 40 years old or so. So new information's always coming up all the time. When I approach an aftercare program for a body piercing, I kind of tackle three main things. First off and foremost, we want to help the body, give it everything it needs to produce more tissue to heal out the piercing. The second thing is we want to clean the wound on a regular basis because you're not used to having an open wound on your body for that long of a period of time, and chances are you're going to probably make a mistake and contaminate the area. So we need to have kind of a regimen where we can correct that situation if need be. The third thing is cross-contamination prevention, changing habits and taking precautions to make sure that we don't introduce a foreign pathogen into the body or into the piercing itself and create an infection. Okay, now for the shopping list. And I'm probably going to post it up here or here, depending on when I get around to editing this. Three things, well, 4 or 5 things you need to pick up. Sea salt, which you can find in the baked goods aisle of any good grocery store. It's also really good on French fries. It's supposed to be healthier for you. Distilled water. Now, distilled water is different from drinking water or purified water. It needs to be actually distilled water. You can find it in the beverage aisle of most larger grocery stores. If you can't find it there, check the infant care section next to the formula and etc. They may have it. Or if you're in a drugstore of some sort, like Walgreens or one of those, you might want to check next to the air purifiers in that general area. Yeah, or just ask somebody. They'll know where it's at. It's a pretty common thing. The next thing is a mild antibacterial liquid soap. Now, when you pick out your soap, you want something that doesn't contain a lot of moisturizers, fragrances, or other additives. So if it has a long description, like moisturizing, winter breeze, or citrus fruit surprise, or something like that, that's not what you want. Probably the most common or easy to find is Dial Gold Antibacterial Liquid Soap. It's the plain old-fashioned orange stuff. It'll be next to all the other hand soaps. If you're one of those people that likes to use natural products, I would suggest finding an antibacterial soap that is grapefruit seed oil based. You can find it at good health food stores. Even larger department stores or grocery stores are going to stock it if they handle a lot of organic products and natural products. Probably the best option, if you want to go to the pharmacy level, is either to purchase satin or Proven soap. Other things you need to pick up. You need a separate box of cotton tip applicators. Now, cotton tip applicators is a fancy way of saying Q-tips. You want to buy a separate container to use specifically for cleaning your piercing and nothing else. I don't suggest storing them in the bathroom. Also, it's not a bad idea to buy an airtight container and keep it sealed in between usage. The other thing is, if you're going to do soaks opposed to compresses, is buying disposable medicine cups. It's just easier. You can get away using a glass or a shot glass, but it's just easier just to toss them, and sometimes it's cleaner because if you don't stay on top of how clean the glassware is, it can cause issues. Final thing is plenty of clean paper towels. It's nice to have them to dry off the piercing after a shower, and also it's a good idea if you're going to be doing, or if you end up doing compresses, you're going to want them. So When I do the compresses or soaks first, do that, take a cup. And when I say cup, I mean a measured cup, 8 ounces of distilled water. Put it in the microwave, heat it up about the same period of time you would if you were warming up coffee or cocoa. You don't want this boiling hot, you want it comfortably warm. What I would consider like bath temperature, comfortable bath. Drop in 1/8 of a teaspoon to 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt. Let it dissolve. Should taste about as salty as your own tears. If you're going to use soaks, you need to figure out a way of submerging the piercing completely into that mixture for a minimum of 10 minutes. If you're going to do compresses, take a clean paper towel. Also, I've had clients use like a sterile piece of gauze sponge, soak up the substance laid against the piercing, constantly re-submerging as it cools, so it stays warm for about 10 minutes. You want to do it before you do the cleaning in the shower, not only because it's going to help break up that discharge and make it a little easier to clean, but you do want to rinse off that saline mixture afterwards. Certain individuals leaving the salt crystals against the piercing can cause issues. Now, this is that first part I talked about. It's helping your body produce skin cells, because the salt actually contains some nutrients, minerals, and vitamins that are helpful in your body's production of skin cells. And the other thing is it also helps to nurture or make the piercing feel better. Piercings, no matter how well you take care of them, sometimes can go through these kind of rough, what we like to call grumpy phases. We're just out of the blue for no apparent reason. It's sore and tender, and that's one of the things you can do to kind of nurse things back on normal, or back to normal, and get things back on track as far as healing. Also, other things you can do is eat healthy, get plenty of sleep, reduce the amount of stress in your life. All those things are going to help you heal the piercing faster. The other part you do in the shower, take care of all your normal bathing duties first. In this case, get some hair product or body wash or something on the piercing and rinse it away. Once you've done that, wash your hands, spray the water onto the outside to remove any discharge or anything that's deposited on the outside, and take that Q-tip we talked about earlier. Soak up some warm water, gently break loose anything that's collected on the jewelry on the inside. Then take the soap, squirt out a pearl drop in the palm of your hand. Does not take a lot, just a little bit. Lather it up well so you're diluting it, because we don't want to put on there full strength. It's too harsh. Apply it to the piercing area. Let it stay in contact for 30 seconds, and you might be saying, I don't have a clock in my... 30 seconds is equivalent to singing Happy Birthday or Mary Had a Little Lamb twice, or reciting the Pledge of Allegiance twice if you don't like your own singing voice. Rinse under running water, and then as soon as you get out of the shower, pat it dry with a clean paper towel. What that's doing is we're probably going to make a mistake during the healing process, and this is that part 2 I was talking about. We're reducing the amount of bacteria and other pathogens that are in the area on a daily basis, twice daily. So we do it once in the morning, once at night, for a minimum in a nostril case where you have a healing time of about 8 to 12 weeks, twice daily for a minimum of 2 months, or until you stop seeing the discharge collecting and depositing on the jewelry, and the piercing will get that kind of indented or ingrown look to it. Whenever in doubt if a piercing is healed or not, and it's time to stop doing the regimen, swing by your local piercer, or in my case, stop by if I did it, and I'll be happy to let you know that it's healed or not. You don't need to start the compresses and soaks or the cleaning in the shower until the day after the piercing is healed. If you want to clean up any dry blood or marker or what have you, that's perfectly fine with some warm water and soap, but don't worry about the compresses and cleaning in the shower. Cross-contamination. This is that third part of the whole process I talked about earlier, where we try to reduce the possibility of foreign pathogens and other bodies being introduced into the open wound that the piercing is during the healing process. Common sense things. Wash your hands before you handle it. Try to handle it by the ends whenever possible. The ball or that seamed area. Whatever is going to come in contact the least with the piercing itself. Keep everybody else's germy little fingers away from it. Understand that microorganisms like bacteria and other pathogens do move on the surface of your skin, so anytime you touch your face or your nose, wash your hands before you handle it. At some point in your life, you might have been told to spin, rotate, or move jewelry during the healing process. There is absolutely no benefit to that. It actually increases the likelihood of infection by overhandling the jewelry and possibly dragging contaminants into the piercing. The other issue is that it can break loose new skin growth and prolong your healing period. Both of those things are bad. It will probably move a little bit on its own, just thanks to good old-fashioned gravity. If there's an issue where you do need to adjust or move the jewelry, it is always best to do it immediately after you get out of the shower and right after you clean your hands. No oral contact or exchange of bodily fluids on near around the piercing until it heals. That does include your own saliva. I've never understood why people think it's safe to lick their fingers and clean things. Not only is that disgusting, but your saliva is full of bacteria. Keep your environment clean. Clothing, bedding, towels, anything that may come in contact with it. Avoiding it around constantly changing your pillowcase is take a clean, soft t-shirt, put it over your pillow, sleep on one side, sleep on the other side. Turn it inside out, sleep on one side, sleep on the other side. Keep pets away from it. Do not let them sleep in the bed with you. They're going to just take every contaminant they've come in contact with that day and deposit it all over your clean sheets and pillowcase. Also, do not submerge the piercing in bodies of water you can't control the quality of, which is pretty much everything but your own clean bathtub. Other precautions you need to take. Do not use harsh cleaners such as benzoyl chloride-based solutions like ear care solution. Do not use witch hazel, rubbing alcohol, hydrogen peroxide. All those things are far too harsh and they have very little benefit to healing the piercing. In fact, they can prolong your healing period. Also, never use any type of ointments. Antibacterial ointments or anything that's petroleum based is just going to prolong your healing period. And actually, if you do have an infection, in some cases can escalate the infection and make it worse. If you use anything that comes out of a spray can or squirt bottle on your hair, you want to shield it with folded up paper towel. When you go see the beautician, I always suggest you do the same thing. I'm always kind of leery of that bottle of water they use to dampen your hair as they trim it. Just to be on the safe side, cover the piercing up. When applying makeup, cosmetics, especially powder-based makeups, you want to keep that away from the piercing. The powder can actually work its way into the piercing, cause agitation and problems, which can lead to, in the worst case scenario, glandular cysts. They're very painful, they're very ugly, and they're very hard to get rid of once they get started, and usually require medical treatment. So, deal with shiny nose for a minute. Lastly, do not sleep on the piercing. Try to make sure that you're sleeping on your side or your back. If you absolutely have to sleep on that side, make sure that you either find a way to elevate it off the bed or create kind of a nest for it. Sleeping on piercings can cause all kinds of issues that you're unaware of that you're causing because you're asleep and you don't realize how much you move around in your sleep. It might feel perfectly okay to lay down and have the piercing in direct contact with the bedding when you go to sleep, but the movement is another issue. I'd say that one of the number one causes of problems I see in most piercings is caused by people sleeping on them after a couple months or after a couple weeks when it feels okay to do that. Jewelry. Leave that piece in until it heals. After it heals, you can take it out and replace another piece. However, you do want to leave something in it at all times for roughly the next 2 to 3 years, only taking out to replace. Understand, regardless of how long you've had the piercing, if you remove the jewelry and leave it out for an extended period of time, your body's going to reconnect the tissue and close the piercing. So it's a good idea. If you like it, leave something in it. I personally never charge to change jewelry, and most piercers don't, as long as it's the proper size, made on proper material, and it's appropriate for that particular piercing. I'll even go as far as autoclaving the jewelry for you and sterilizing it if you wish. When it comes to picking out jewelry, there's 2 types of jewelry I strongly suggest against. And the first type, it looks just like an ear piercing stud, but it's been relabeled nose jewelry. It's an ear piercing stud. It's not long enough. It's impossible to get the backs on and off, those butterfly style backs inside your nose. The other type, they're called nostril bones. One side has a ball, the other side has a gem setting. It's one solid piece, what goes between the two. The balls come in various different sizes. The larger ones have their own issues from the standpoint of they'll usually go in fairly easy, but because the post is thinner than the original piercing, the hole will shrink down to the size of the post. A couple months go by, and you have to drag that ball through that now smaller hole. The other type are a little too small, and they tend to just simply fall out all the time. When it comes also, I don't suggest putting anything made of silver in your nose. Your nose is a mucous membrane. Silver, as it erodes, it'll leak out the compounds, silver salts, and it can lead to what is called silver poisoning, which is a permanent, bluish, purplish, black tattooing of the area around the piercing, sometimes even the bottom of the nostril. Once it starts, though I've seen some articles on people that claim they can fix it but don't have really any proof, once they start, it's really difficult to get rid of, if not impossible. So never put anything made of silver in your nose, period. Jewelry I do suggest, rings, nostril screws, L-bins, and little brace studs. With nostril screws and L-bins, the only thing that's going to be physically holding that wire or holding that piercing in your nose is that with nostril screws and L-bins, the only thing that's physically holding it in there is that curvature or straight piece of wire on the inside of your nose. They can sometimes get caught just right and flip out on their own, and they usually fall into whatever disgusting area of the room you're in. And then there's the problem with trying to get them back in. During the healing process, we do leave them a little bit on the loose side on purpose to allow for inflammation and also to make it easier to clean. Once it heals, they can be tightened up to make them a little bit more secure. I usually suggest about 3 to 4 months into the healing process. In the meantime, though, be very cautious when you're washing your face, when you're drying off, when you get out of the shower, and changing clothing. Now, you might be asking yourself, I don't know what type of jewelry that is. A nostril screw is basically a piece of jewelry with a head or a gem setting on one side, straight piece, and then it'll have a curvature. It's kind of like a question mark, but the top curvature part is bent over. L-bins are simply what they sound like. They're an L-bin. So that wire sits in the inside of your nose. Well, brace studs, they have a flat disc on one side, then a post, and then either a threaded or push pin piece of jewelry that goes into it. Rings, that's pretty self-explanatory. They're rings. Anyway, if you see a piece of jewelry and you're not quite sure if it's going to work or not, don't hesitate to get a hold of me. I'm sure if you contact your own piercer, they'll be happy to give you advice regardless of where you're spending your money. I'm the same way. Also, if you're looking for something very specific and you're just not finding it, if you go to my website, it lists roughly 4 different places I suggest buying jewelry online. And the reason why I like those places, it lists the manufacturer ratings of the jewelry, so you know where it came from, who made it, what the quality of the jewelry is, and what it's actually made out of. Opposed to going to the mall or department store or buying something off Etsy, eBay, or Amazon, where you have no idea where these people are buying this stuff in bulk, and they really don't volunteer the information. Lastly, infections. Infections are very infrequent. Something creeps up and doesn't seem right to you, get in contact with me immediately or seek professional medical help. 2 worst things you can do if you think you have an infection is put off getting taken care of because it's just going to get worse. Possibly turn systematic and spread. It'd be much more difficult to correct the longer you put off getting taken care of. The other thing is taking the jewelry out. A lot of people's misconception, that's screwed up, I'll take the jewelry out, everything goes. The problem with that thinking is the fact that it is a puncture wound and what happens, or how your body heals infections and what happens when you remove the jewelry. Your body heals infections by pushing infected tissue and fluids out of the wounds while replacing with healthy tissue below. When you remove the jewelry with a piercing, it's usually the only thing that's keeping those 2 holes open. They will close, and because the infection can be deep, it seals off that infection and traps it inside your body, triggering 1 of 2 events. Worst case scenario, it turns into an inward trauma infection. It can actually spread into other tissue if left untreated. It can possibly turn septic or cause permanent tissue or structure damage. More commonly, your body will try to isolate the infection by developing a cyst or an abscess, and then slowly and very painfully pushing it to the surface. In both cases, you're definitely going to need medical treatment, and it's probably going to involve having it lanced and drained. If you leave the jewelry in, it allows a way for your body to expel the infection, and also usually makes it a little bit more treatable. Now, it's not going to be uncommon to see some signs of infection, like discomfort, discolorization, heat, tenderness to touch, inflammation, swelling. Off and on for that first couple of weeks, your body gets over the trauma of the piercing and starts to accept it. It's also not uncommon to see a tad bit of bleeding, anywhere from 1 to 5 days. Usually this kind of collection around the piercing holes. Most people do not even notice it. That's pretty much the gist of it. I always give a sheet out, or a pamphlet actually. And I really highly suggest that you hold on to this. If you got it done by me, this also works as your receipt, as I guarantee my piercings and jewelry within normal use for a year, as long as you have this. Usually with the pamphlets, you'll have basic shopping list, instructions on how to take care of it, also the jewelry size, when it was done, and by whom. It's very important you always hang on to literature like that. If you go to a shop and they don't go through at least some form of this, or don't give you aftercare instructions, they aren't doing their job, in my opinion. I believe that a large part of my job is educating the public, especially my clients, to give them the information they need to heal out a piercing correctly. So I hope you enjoyed this. I did, and I hope you learned something maybe. If you have any questions, problems, concerns, etc., feel free to contact me. All my contact information is on my website. I'll list the links below. If you would like to see more videos on this and on tattooing and all the other things we do here in this building, I suggest you click on the subscribe button for it. If you'd like to see some of my personal vlogs and some of that, click on the picture of the handsome me. And subscribe to my personal channel. If you'd like to see more on Aftercare or more information on nostril piercings, go ahead and do that. Other than that, you have a good day and happy piercing.